Hi, Suruchi. Welcome to PolkaWorld interview.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Kristen. It's a pleasure to meet with you.
Yeah, and before the meeting, I've studied a lot of your, background. It's very inspiring for me because I always admire women like you, start business all by your own, and it's serious and never stop. What's the inspirations that behind, that drive you all along?
Thank you for the question and thank you for the kind words. So, my inspiration, I would say that started at a very, very young age. So, I'm originally from India. I was born and brought up in Mumbai. And, growing up, I was just fascinated by this group called the Tata Group for two main reasons. Number one, it is this $300 billion conglomerate. So, they've generated this massive value for the world. So, that was number one. And the number two reason was that they distribute 66% of profits back to the community every single year. And so growing up, I always wanted to build something similar that not only generated this massive value for the world, but also lifted humanity up at the same time. And so I had that inspiration and that fascination with this Tata group from a very, very young age. And so I just wanted to build something similar. And that's where I decided to move to Silicon Valley to just, rapidly upskill my education, network, experience, anything and everything that I would need to build a massive global organization like that. And here I am building Giant, which is very much inspired by the Tata group.
Yeah, so what's promoting you to be all set, to launch the Giant? I think, to start a project, you have to make up your mind,
That's right. That's right. So I think, given that I was very passionate and excited about building something that created this massive value for the world and also lifted humanity up at the same time, when you think about that and you put that into perspective and think about internet connectivity. So we believe that access to internet should really be a basic human right. And it should be owned and governed by all of us, the users. So basically, the idea was very simple that, hey, internet is one of the largest utilities in the world, right? 5 billion of us spend more than trillions of dollars to access internet every single year. So how about we just turned internet into a digital asset so that anyone on the planet that is using internet can now just become an owner in this connectivity economy. And then by naturally, like all of us can become an owner of internet. And so that was really the motivation in terms of wanting to basically build or rather turn bandwidth into a global digital asset so that we create this liquid market for bandwidth where anyone can now buy, sell, trade, swap internet packages or plans.
And you started from the eSIM, right? And you already launched the dApps. I tried. It's very convenient. Why you start with eSIM? Because to be honest, personally, I'm the first time to heard about the eSIM. And before our interview, I studied a lot.
So a couple of reasons why we chose to start with eSIM. So first and foremost, with eSIM, it is for the first time possible to turn a bandwidth contract into a digital bandwidth contract. So that anywhere in the world, without needing to swap SIM cards, you can simply scan a QR code to instantly go online anywhere in the world. So eSIM allows that digital provisioning of bandwidth to happen for the very first time. That's the number one reason. And the other thing was, when we talk about turning bandwidth into a digital asset, right? We first wanted that technology that allowed that seamless use case or seamless experience to be possible, where it's like you've already tried the product. It's like anyone with a mobile phone or a computer can just come to the Giant shop, right? And purchase this contract or purchase a data plan. And after purchasing that data plan, they're basically just shown a QR code. And we just have to scan that QR code to instantly go online anywhere in over 200 plus countries where we have coverage. Now, when you think about that, that's so powerful, right? Where for the first time, without needing an app, without needing a wallet, without needing SIM cards, anyone can just scan a QR code to instantly go online. So that's like that, the technology itself, which is eSIM is quite powerful from that standpoint. So which was the reason why when we wanted to build this open permissionless way for anyone to buy bandwidth or go online anywhere in the world, eSIM was that technology that gave us this experience, the user experience that we were envisioning. And so that was one of the main reasons why we started with eSIM. And so the second thing is, we are certainly betting that eSIM is a fundamental technology in terms of all of our devices in the next 5 years are all going to be eSIM compatible. Today, there are about 1 billion devices that are eSIM compatible already. But in the next 5 years, pretty much all of our devices are already going to be eSIM compatible. Now, in Apple's case, they just released the first iPhone, which was iPhone 14, which does not even have a physical SIM card. So as we all know, Apple is this pioneer of all technologies, right? Like they just pick a trend and then they ride that wave. So in this case, eSIM was certainly something that Apple advocated for since 2018. And now it's like after like 5 years, for the first time, they basically have started releasing an eSIM only device. So as we all know, everyone else is just going to follow Apple's suit, basically. So that's where in the next 5 years time, pretty much all of our devices are going to be eSIM compatible. So that was the other reason why we knew that eSIM is this key enabling technology that will fundamentally change how we go online. And that was the other reason why we decided to start with eSIM. But as far as our technology is concerned, in Giant's case, we are technology agnostic, meaning we can tokenize and financialize bandwidth regardless of whether it is an LTE or an eSIM contract, whether it is a Wi-Fi contract, whether it is a satellite internet contract. Like we are building a technology agnostic platform. They are just starting with eSIM because eSIM certainly is has a lot of benefits and advantages as a technology.
And as you mentioned, that eSIM starts in 2018. From my understanding, that it's growing very, very fast. Do you think, before it is going to mainstream, it is only the time, or what is still missing?
Absolutely, I think it is only a matter of time. As I mentioned, in Apple's case, Apple for the first time released an eSIM only phone. So iPhone 14 in the US only have eSIM now. They don't even have a physical SIM slot. So that's where it's like, it is a bold statement in a way, right, from Apple, that they're releasing an eSIM only device. So it's only a matter of time where pretty much all the devices will become eSIM compatible.
And how would this work in practice? Giant is addressing all these problems like a connectivity imbalance and lower the cost of global connectivity. And how would this work in practice?
So it's very simple. So basically think of Giant as a three-sided market, where it's like on one side, we have telecom operators. On the second side, we have consumers. And on the third side is our community. These are the three main audiences that we have. Now, from a telecom provider's point of view, what we are allowing them to do is sell unused capacity or future capacity through Giant. That's one thing. Now, from an end user's point of view, Giant is a way for them to get the best value for their money, which they can also resell now to someone else. So for example, let's say if you bought a $50 plan with Giant, not only would that $50 plan actually be very cost effective compared to other options that you have, on top of that, you are getting rewarded in Giant tokens. So whatever you spend, like let's say you spent, $100, out of that $100, you get 40% of that back in Giant. Those Giant tokens get auto deposited into a provider pool. And from that provider pool, you are then rewarded additional 13% APY plus 5% of sales of that provider. So in a way, it is acting like your savings account where the rewards that you earned for just spending money on connectivity, which is what all of us do, right? We all use internet. So in this case, just for using internet, you get rewarded. So that $40 that you earned on that $100, that gets auto deposited into this savings pool or savings account. And from there, you earn additional 13% APY plus 5% of sales of that provider. So it's like a real neat way for any consumer to get started. And so how does this really work for the consumer? It's like you can download our mobile app, or you can come to this giant shop, which is from our website. You can go there. Over there, you can buy a bandwidth contract, and I can even give you a live demo actually. It's like, so basically, when you go to our website, you would essentially see these cards. Would you like me to give you a live demo?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so basically, I just go to this giant shop. And so as you can see, this is basically our first version of the protocol app, where anyone in over 200 plus countries can buy or gift mobile data simply by coming to this giant shop. So I can get you a plan. Let's say you are in China. So in China, we already support a bunch of different providers. So you can see that if you spend $5, you get 40% of that back in giant tokens, which is basically you get $2 back. Now this $2 that you earn, it will get auto deposited into the provider pool. And so from there, you will so these are the two provider pools, and from there you will actually be able to earn that 13% APY plus 5% of sales. So in my case, I've already earned 12.77 in giant tokens, which is 13% APY plus 5% of sales, depending on obviously what my stake amount is in the entire pool. So it's like, it's a very simple way for anyone to just come here. And if you have an eSIM compatible device, actually, I can get you an eSIM here right now. You have 180 days to activate it, which means before the 180 days, you can trade it, you can transfer it, you can collateralize it, all the fun stuff that you basically can do with an NFT, you can now do with a tokenized bandwidth contract.
Okay.
So that's the beauty of it, where these cards that you see, they are nothing but like NFT.
Okay.
Instead, it is essentially a real utility bandwidth contract, which is represented like an NFT, which in our world we call as DCT, or data contract token.
Okay. And you know, the APY and rewarding is very attractive. So how could you ensure
How are we doing that? Yeah,
it is sustainable?
Glad you asked the question. As I was talking about, we have three audiences: the consumers, the providers, and the community. So we want to make sure we are incentivizing each of the audiences, right? In order to build a sustainable economy, we first wanted to make sure we are basically able to bootstrap this network by giving our early adopters good incentives or rich incentives. And at the same time, we wanted to make sure we are building a long-term sustainable economy. So first and foremost, where is basically that 40% that we are giving back to the users coming from? We have a 12.5% of our entire token supply allocated towards rewarding consumers. Similarly, we have 12.5% of our tokens set aside for rewarding providers. So we want to reward consumers and we want to reward providers. And then we have about 20% of our supply for validators, basically mainly for the community. So when I say that, hey, the tokens that you earn as a consumer, so that is coming from the consumer bucket, first and foremost. And it is starting with 40%, but it geometrically declines. So depending on, there are certain tiers that we have, which is in our white paper. You can, the audience can go and check that out. But basically, it geometrically declines at certain milestones. So we are simply starting with 40% just because we want to bootstrap the network. So that's where that 40% is coming from. Now that 40% is getting auto deposited into a provider pool. So essentially every provider, so every telecom operator essentially in our ecosystem has their own pool. Okay. So that the 40% that you earn from buying a bandwidth contract from Giant gets auto deposited into that provider pool. Okay, so far you're with me. Now that provider pool, this is a unique mechanism that we have designed. Now what that provider pool does is it also helps secure the chain. So Giant has its own substrate-based chain. And we're actually gearing up to become a parachain very, very soon. So actually the audience can earn Giant by simply bonding their dot tokens as we go for our parachain auction, essentially. But coming back, so the way this works is, are the tokens that get auto deposited into that provider pool, they are also auto bonded with a validator. And because we have NPOS consensus and we have block rewards allocated for validators, that is where the 13% APY is coming from. The way we've designed it, it is like automatically they get auto bonded. So any tokens that get deposited into that provider pool, it is auto bonded with a validator. So that's where the 13% is coming from. And because we want the provider to incentivize the community to actually cover the refund. So what I mean by that is, the pool that we have, which is the provider pool, it does two things. One is that it is securing the ledger or the chain. That is where the 13% APY is coming from. And the second thing it is doing is, it is guaranteeing the delivery of internet. What I mean by that is, let's say for whatever reason, when you're buying a contract through Giant, you could not use internet. So in that case, this pool automatically gives a refund back to the end user. So that's where it is guaranteeing that if you buy internet through Giant, you will either get your money back or you will get the internet. So that's where this pool stakers or the community is in a way guaranteeing that they will cover the refund. And because they are covering that refund risk is why the telecom operator gives them 5% of their sales into the pool. So that's how, on one hand, so the 13% APY, which is the validator reward, they decrease 1% annually because we only have a fixed supply, right? So that is where it declines 1% annually. But around the same time, we expect the 5% of sales, which is of the provider, to exponentially increase. So that's how, on one hand, we make sure that we are able to bootstrap the network by giving good incentives. And on the other hand, we are able to make sure that we are building a long-term sustainable economy.
And could you share with us some data to of how many people are adopting and how fast it is growing in the...
Sure. Yeah. So we started with our mobile app first. So on our mobile app side, we already have hundreds of thousands of users that have registered. And now we just integrated with the protocol as we speak, like in the last, few weeks time. And so on the protocol side, the adoption is just getting started because we recently made it available. Now we are becoming a parachain, as I was talking about, right, very soon. So we are first starting with focusing towards the Polkadot community. So majority of our protocol users are actually Polkadot users that are mainly, traveling, that want to just use Giant to look cool or gift it to someone else that is traveling if they may not be traveling. Because the gift use case, if I was to share with you, it is as easy as anyone in over 200 plus countries simply creating a URL. So it's like when you gift data to someone, it's nothing but you creating a unique URL which you can share with anyone in any of the 200 plus countries where we already have coverage. And that person that you send that URL to, they will just basically be shown a button which says activate now, and they will be it will tell them that, hey, you've received free internet, click activate now to activate. And so that person that receives the URL, they don't need an app, they don't need a wallet, they don't need any like physical SIM card or anything. They literally just by clicking on a URL can go online anywhere in the world. It's like so simple and so seamless.
Okay, now most of the users are coming from Polkadot ecosystem. What's next? And
Yes, so the next thing is basically the first version that I showed you, that version does not allow you to resell your unused data. So this is a teaser where the one release that we're working on would allow users to resell their unused bandwidth back to anyone, which is, as you can imagine, pretty cool. And the next big milestone for us, though, is to become a Polkadot parachain, for which we would be having a crowd loan. And then after that, we would basically be turning our parachain into becoming an EVM chain, EVM compatible chain. After that, these contracts or these DCTs that I had just shown on the screen, they will start becoming a cross-chain asset, so that any NFT marketplace, any exchange, any wallet can simply integrate this into their existing platform and start selling these as like an NFT. So that's basically some of the immediate items in our roadmap.
Oh, and eSIM is just one kind of connection, and the Giant is also partners with other kind of companies like Halba from security audits and IoTex for global decentralized IoT connectivity. So that's also amazing. So could you share with us more partnerships, like more possibilities of how to connect, how to realize the connectivity?
Yes, so the key partnerships that you all can be looking at is essentially existing platforms like NFT marketplaces or wallets or exchanges that can basically start integrating Giant data plans from their existing platform, so that anyone that is coming to that existing platform can start trading, transferring, collateralizing a real bandwidth contract or a real utility contract, which is, I think, everyone talks about in crypto and blockchain, that, hey, what's a real world use case, right? So in this case, Giant could actually be one of the first real bandwidth utility contracts on the blockchain.
Let's talk about Polkadot, because why is Polkadot? Because there are always emerging public chains all along. So why do you choose Polkadot?
So there were a couple of reasons. The first and foremost thing was we are building an entire ecosystem around connectivity, right? So we wanted the ability to actually customize the chain per our use case. So we are essentially, so Polkadot, Substrate, the framework that Polkadot actually uses, right? Substrate allows us to customize the runtime logic the way we wanted it. So for example, like a simple example was that like all of us are paying for connectivity, right? So we just didn't want users to need to pay for gas fee on top of that. Because see, unlike a lot of other layer one chains where their business model is gas fee, in this case, all of the users are already used to paying for connectivity. So there is no reason or there is no point to actually charge users on top of that. So it's like, obviously, when we work with any other chain, that simple use case itself would not be possible, right? Where either user or us as the team has to cover the fee. And it just does not make sense. And then the other thing is, when we talk about, hey, we are allowing users to cryptographically verify whether internet was delivered or not, what we call as proof of connection. So that proof of connection logic is part of our node logic. So again, that was something that required customization. And so that's where using a framework like Substrate allowed us to customize that as part of our node logic itself. So there were technical reasons in terms of why Substrate made sense. The other big reason, honestly, was that when we started building the tech, which was end of 2020, there were not very many options we had. Like actually, Polygon did not exist at that time. Polygon mainnet was not ready. There was like Solana and Near were just getting started. So there was not much developer tools or developer tools really available. And so it was like layer twos actually were not ready as well. It was all in the pipeline. So it was like, hey, do we want to wait for these ecosystems to start flourishing, or we actually control our roadmap and, you know, build something that we know is going to be scalable as we grow and as our vision evolves. So that's where the only option really was between Polkadot and Cosmos. And then on the Polkadot ecosystem, like from the Polkadot ecosystem, we actually had a bunch of friends in the Polkadot ecosystem already. So we had conversations with a bunch of other friends in terms of the ones that had already started building in the Polkadot ecosystem. So like, you know, Akala, Moonbeam, Aster, all of the founders are friends. So I had actually spoken to all of them to ask them about their experience in building, their experience of building using Substrate. And that was quite positive. So it was like, so that's where it was a combination of technical reasons from an evaluation standpoint, plus business reasons and just ecosystem. So it was a combination of all three. We made the decision to go forward and build on Polkadot.
Okay. You know, personally, I think you have an engaging personality.
Thank you. Thank you.
And, you know, how do you remain optimistic through different challenges in life, especially, you know, the challenges you are facing for Giant?
Well, that's a very good question. I think all my life, like if you go back to that, I don't know if you know about this book called 0 to 1, which was written by Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
So Peter Thiel has that framework of optimists, pessimists, and then definitive and indefinite, right? So that metrics of optimist, pessimist, definite, and indefinite. So I would say I fall into the indefinite optimist category. So it's like the optimism is in a way ingrained in me since my childhood, where it was always about, to me, it was very clear that I'm a very spiritual person. So it's like all of us as this community or humanity are really here to learn and contribute to this one big consciousness, which is basically even bigger than the universe, right? So basically, so the point is that what I think brings me that indefinite optimism is just being grounded and connected to nature and knowing that we are all here just to do our part in terms of contributing to that one big consciousness. So any like anything in terms of whether it is success or failure, it's in a way just contributing to that one big consciousness, and we are all here to just learn and do our part. So in a way, I'm very, very optimistic. I've always been very optimistic. I still am very optimistic, where I believe that the amount of progress just in the last few decades that has happened, and if we think about the technological advancements that keep happening, they're all thanks to us, right? It's all thanks to all of human brains and like human mind coming together. So it's like the collective power of all individuals. It's like, to me, massive. And it's quite inspiring as a whole when we think about what the world looked like just 40 years back and what it looks like today, right? So that itself just brings me optimism in terms of just looking at how collectively, whenever there was a crisis that needed to be solved, all of us just come together to solve it. Like COVID is an excellent example as well, right? Where it's like in a matter of few months, the vaccine was available when otherwise it would take several years for a vaccine like that and at that scale to be made available. But that's when you think about the possibilities and what we as a human race have achieved and continue to achieve, it's full of optimism, right? Like there's nothing less than that. So it's like we've achieved massive feats which seemed impossible just a few decades ago, and now we achieve them in few months and few years time. So it's like that just all fills me with a lot of optimism. in terms of what is possible.
Mm.
Just combination of a few things. Yeah.
Yeah, what are the challenges Giant is facing now?
Okay. Well, where do I start? I think there are so many of them. I think the first and foremost thing is, until now, we really focused on the development of the tech and the development of the platform. And now we are just starting or beginning our awareness efforts, where it's like one of the biggest challenges for us is just not very many people know about Giant. So certainly, with this platform, the goal is that a few more people will know about us, right? And then those people can actually talk to more people about Giant. So that's where hopefully the word starts spreading. So our first and foremost challenge is just awareness. Is like a lot of people not knowing about Giant. And then the other thing is, let's say if someone comes to know about Giant, as you were mentioning, you did not know about eSIM. So you have to then educate and learn about eSIM, right?
Yeah.
And then when you learn about eSIM, you may not have an eSIM compatible device. You have to then get an eSIM compatible device. So it's like when you think about it, so that's where first you don't know about Giant, then you don't know about eSIM, then you may not have an eSIM device. So these are all multiple challenges that we have to essentially address, right? Of course, we can't address it at a massive scale from day one. But the idea is that that gradually do get addressed themselves in terms of just market becoming aware and educated about what is possible with Giant, with eSIM, with getting an eSIM compatible device and things of that nature. So awareness, I would say, is the biggest challenge we have.
Yeah, at least the PolkaWorld is helping. Last but not least, could you share with us the roadmap for 2023? What's the big things coming?
Sure. So the number one big thing is we are gearing up for becoming a parachain. So before we can become a parachain, we will basically have our crowd loan, where we would invite all of the DOT holders to come stake their DOT in our cloud loan, so that they can actually also earn Giant, right? And actually become a community holder, basically. So that's the number one key big milestone that we're working on as we speak. Once that happens, we would basically then become an EVM compatible chain, after which we basically want to invite all of the developers to come and start turning our DCTs into a cross-chain asset, so that they can just integrate this DCT in their existing ecosystems. And that way, they can attract all of these billions of internet users that already exist in the real world. And that is, I think, powerful, right? Where basically real world users, simply by scanning a QR code, if they can start becoming accustomed to crypto, that's quite powerful, and that's very beneficial for the entire community. And so that's the second thing. And then, as I was mentioning, we are also going to allow users to start reselling their unused data. And so that way, there is nothing to lose anymore when you're buying a bandwidth contract or a connectivity plan or a data plan. Whereas today, all of us lose more than 25% of data that we buy, because most of us don't use it fully.
Okay, great. And the time flies. It's drawing the end to our interview, and it is a great time. And I think the audience and me studied a lot about Giant and the big vision, and I think it really helps. It's amazing.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be chatting with you.